Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the UL Open Day, where I'm going to talk to you about STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths. So some of you will already have been at talks this morning. Some of you will be going to talks later this afternoon. And really what I'm trying to do is give a broad summary of what comes under the banner of STEM. And even in doing that, it's quite difficult because obviously there's other subjects that I'm not including, but it's really just to give an overall view, and for finding out specific information, please do go to the courses and the different course directors will be able to give you very specific information. So what I want to talk about, engineering to start with. So really when we talk about engineering, we're talking about giving solutions to problems. So if we've got a problem, how do we solve that? And I will give you some examples. Then science is really giving us the fundamental information that allows us to solve those problems. And without science, we wouldn't have engineering. Maths then, I suppose people are relatively familiar with maths, so it's really about using those calculations to help us solve the problems that need to be solved in engineering. And technology then supports all of these. So computing, information technology help us to work through our maths, our science and our engineering problems. So just to give you some examples, and I've just picked a cross section from various engineering disciplines. So the first one is around civil engineering. So we can see here that these 7 people are trying to get across the river. Now, we would prefer to get across the river without getting wet. So how do we solve that problem? We solve that problem by building a bridge. So our engineers would come in, look at the land, look at the water, look at the distances, and try and design a bridge that will allow people, traffic to cross, trains to cross. And as you can see from the bridge I've shown, we also need architecture involved. How do we design this bridge to make it work for us aesthetically as well as practically? Second example is performance engineering. So these young people are at a concert. Now, in my day when I went to a concert, you know, we went, it was the performer, it was the singing that happened. But nowadays, there's much more around concerts, which is fantastic for that experience than just the listening, the dancing, the singing. There's an awful lot of it around the light show, the sound show, the surrounding, you know, the aesthetics of the situation. And for those types of positions, we need people who are performance engineers, people who are bringing backgrounds in music, in art, into the computing area so that we can improve the experiences. And it's not just limited to concerts, but that's just one example of how we might use that. Manufacturing engineering then, so here's excuse me, here's a manufacturing line, and we can see that it's quite manual. You can see the people looking, the people working, and nowadays manufacturing has changed and we've ended up with much more automation, much more tools being used, and people who do manufacturing engineering work out the correct process. So how do we do that manufacturing more efficiently and more effectively? So solving the problem of we've got to build cars, we've got to build computers, we've got to build furniture. How do we do this? How do we do it efficiently and effectively? And the final example I want to throw in here is around biomedical engineering. So really what's happening now is there's been a very much a combination of healthcare with engineering to help us improve what's being done in our healthcare systems. So, for example, if somebody's having a heart operation, of course the surgeon knows how to do the heart operation, but what about the direction of the arteries for that particular bypass? How do we make sure that blood flow happens continually after the operation? How do we make sure that that's all done right? So it does take engineering skills to actually support that. And an example here is showing a patient who has they've been doing quite a bit of work around artificial intelligence and understanding the brain, and how can people who've had accidents or been paralysed support them in walking again through using their brains. So it's quite very interesting that the work that's been done for people who have a disability and how improvements can happen through biomedical engineering. So they're just some examples. As I said, they're not complete, but it's just to give an idea about, it's not just about going in and working on an engineering problem, it's about solving a problem for somebody. But interestingly, none of these could happen without science. So none of the examples I've given you can be done without having the underlying science that supports them. So as examples, what weight will the bridge hold? So there's no point in building the bridge unless we are aware what happens when lorries cross the bridge, when traffic cross the bridge. In the medical side, what effect will drugs have on the patient? So around chemistry, biology, we need to know the effect of drugs on the body. And thirdly there, what pressure can we apply to manufactured parts? So if we actually put the wrong pressures, we might actually break the particular parts that we're working on. So science is really important. And we also need technology. So many people now will use computer-aided design when they're doing engineering and engineering drawings. How do we actually identify those sound and light interactions for the concert? And I suppose another interesting one from the world of medicine is that now in some hospitals, if you go in for a hip replacement, it won't be just an out-of-a-box hip that you will get. The surgeon will actually work with computer specialists to build up a 3D print of the hip replacement that's actually going into somebody's body. So those things are happening, processes are changing, things are getting much more efficient because we've got all this computer support around. And lastly, but not least at all, it's around maths. So what are the weights and pressures for equipment that's being used? How can we calculate the effect of drugs on the body? Because we do need to know that if we are actually giving people drugs. And what's our manufacturing output? So again, maths is fundamental to all of this. And interestingly, you see, what's happening is the world is changing. And all of these topics are fundamental to the change. And I suppose people of my generation would actually talk about how fast the world has changed over the last 20 years. Like we have the internet now for 20 years and how fast the world has changed. But really hasn't the world changed dramatically fast in the last 6-7 months? Who would have thought that I would be doing an open day talk to you through my laptop sitting at home here? And we really have had to really change, and fundamental to all of that is STEM. So it's important that people are thinking about STEM topics because it's so fundamental to what's happening in the world. And an area that I'm particularly passionate about is the whole area of diversity in STEM. So like the importance of having women involved in STEM. And there are many reports now coming out from business particularly showing that if you have women on teams, that the output is more diverse, is stronger, is more efficient, more effective. And there are actually studies showing that. It's important for us as women that we are helping to build this changing world. And let me just give you a couple of examples. So think about this for a minute. When do you think that seatbelt manufacturers realized that women actually used a seatbelt? So if anyone came up with 2009, you're doing well. So it is only 11 years ago that seatbelt design started to be done, taking women's bodies into account. And what's the consequence of this? The consequence is that many babies have been lost in the womb through car accidents because the seatbelt crushed them. And many women have had serious chest injuries because the seatbelt did not work properly on their bodies. And it's quite frightening, I think, to think that that has only come to realization since 2009. So one really wonders, if there were female engineers in those groups, would that have been different? I would like to think so. Another example, think of a symptom of a heart attack. Any one symptom. Did you get symptoms that men have or symptoms that women have? And interestingly, when I asked this question of groups, the majority of people will know that there's chest pain, will know that there's pain down the arm. But how many people know that sudden dizziness or cold sweat is actually a symptom of heart attack? And this has really come about because the animals that would be used in labs were normally male animals, but women's bodies are different. So we do have different effects. And it's only in recent years that this has really come to be recognised. So I do think it's really important that young women, you young women out there, are actually considering engineering. And just to, I suppose, maybe highlight the point. So here's some women, just photographs, daughters, mothers, sisters. Here they are, all standing smiling at us. And yet, which group of these are in STEM? Is it A or B or C? And if you've guessed, how can you tell? They all are. And what I'm trying to say here is that the women who are involved in STEM are normal people and getting on with their work, enjoying the exciting opportunities that STEM offers them. And when we're talking about opportunities, one of the questions that's always asked is, are there job opportunities? So I always check it out before I give a talk. I say, let's have a look and see, are there job opportunities? So here's some recent announcements. So 27th of August 2020, EGENERON, who are a pharma company, announced 400 new jobs at its facility in Raheen, County Limerick, bringing its headcount to 1,400. And not only do they need people in the sciences and in the biomedical side, which is their mainstay of the company, they also need people in manufacturing, process sciences, quality assurance and control, supply chain, and support functions. So again, if you ever see adverts where it says support functions, a lot of the time, particularly IT, information technology, is required within companies. Secondly, this is just to highlight that Limerick and the surrounding Midwest region have some of the world's biggest companies. So Becton Dickinson, who are a biomedical company, Kemp Technologies and Jaguar Land Rover. And again, one would look at Jaguar Land Rover and think about them as being a car manufacturer. But the reality is they actually have a huge software development group within JLR, because much of the software, much of the cars now, the cost of a car now is software. So again, the whole technology side, the STEM side breaking out. This is a report from just a few weeks ago, 5th of October 2020, where Leo Varadkar Artonishta announced 206 new jobs at high growth IDA-backed companies. Now here are the 7 companies that he was talking about. They're not household names. Some of them aren't even science companies or STEM companies, but they need people to actually work in those areas. And what they're saying is the new jobs are spread across the technology and business service sectors, sales and marketing, software development and tech support. So again, just to point out that there's lots of jobs actually happening. And the third one I wanted to mention is Fidelity Investments. And they announced 100 technology jobs for Dublin and Galway back in April. And I suppose why this one is particularly important is that it actually shows that even past the COVID and when we were on lockdown, Fidelity were still employing people. And they're saying that all of the workforce were working from home across Ireland and are ready to welcome new colleagues to support our expanding need for tech skills and talent we have based here in Ireland. So there's a company that right in the middle of COVID were announcing new jobs in the STEM sector. And the last one there is the US technology company HubSpot, creating 450 new roles in Ireland, and that one was back in March. So they're just some examples of jobs. The tech industry, the STEM industry, is short of, we're just short of people all the time. There are always jobs available. There are great opportunities in STEM. Graduates are getting jobs in STEM. So it's really something that I would really like to encourage you to think about taking STEM courses. So just a few final thoughts. For you personally, what subjects are you good at? And what subjects do you enjoy? And based on these, that's really what you should be looking at when you're making your choices. And I ask the question, why are you making the choices? Because too often I hear stories of peers, mainly peers, saying to students, but you won't be able to do that. The point is that if you are good at the subject, if you enjoy the subjects, then why wouldn't you be? Of course you would be good at it. So think about you yourself and what choices you want. And one of the saddest things for me as a lecturer sometimes is when I meet a student who says, I was really encouraged to do this by, my brother, my sister, and I really hate it. And I knew I was going to hate it, and they're pulling out and restarting. So really think about what subjects are you good at and what subjects do you enjoy? And think about creating the opportunities for yourself. Like, the world is your oyster, really, when you have a STEM degree. So really think about, the travel opportunities, the money opportunities, the fact of doing lots of different things. It's such a wide and varied job. If you pick up a job, if you're looking at a job today, you will find in 5 years' time, when you're graduating, or 4 years' time, that will be a really different job. So there's such variety, it's really important. And bottom line is, if your record shows you are good enough, then you are good enough. So think about this for you, because you are the one who has to do the study and has to go ahead and work in the job. So just to wrap up, and actually someone said this morning I should just hold on to this slide if you want to take a photograph of it. It will also be available on the recording later. These are some websites really that are showing various videos around jobs that are available in STEM. They are focused for women in engineering, but to be honest, anyone who's interested in STEM positions, if you have a look at these, it shows some of the really nice careers that you can have. The other thing I just wanted to mention is the Faculty of Science and Engineering have a special maths entrance exam, which happens after Leaving Cert results come out. And this allows students who don't qualify, get their correct maths qualification for a course they might want, to actually have a second opportunity to go for it. So again, this is probably one that you might want to take a photograph of, but certainly if you do need to sit it, then make sure that you come back in and check it out.